everyone, I am Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. Welcome to Royals at the Ranch for Thursday, November 18th, 2021. In this week's episode, I intended to introduce you to Soji, our 6-year-old adult cinnamon royal python that has not been with us too long. However, I don't have her nidovirus test results back yet, and so she is still in quarantine. And what you're going to get to see in this video are a few photos and I think a short video of her in her enclosure. And then you're going to get to see her trip to the vet where she got a physical exam, a microchip implant, and her nidovirus testing. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the narration over the video. But as soon as she's out of quarantine, I just know that she is going to be willing to be in some of these videos because she has no problem coming out of her enclosure. I'm not taking her out because I handle a ton of other snakes. I have her in a room by herself. Well, except for cats. She's in a room with cats, but she's very large and in an enclosure that she cannot get out of whatsoever unless I open the door. I just don't want her around the other snakes, or I don't want to handle her a bunch until I know for sure that she doesn't have anything wrong with her, and I'm sure that you all understand that. So enjoy this episode. We also have a continuation of our behavior break from last time. And we talked about behavior modification. And this week I said I was going to go over the different behavior modification techniques. I'm going to get started with that. And then we'll have a part 3 next time. And then of course, we're going to finish up with royals in your homes. Soji is a 6-year-old female python regius. She was hatched in 2015. She is a cinnamon. She came from PhD pythons in Connecticut. Soji has a diverse behavioral history and has been exposed to a variety of different situations and circumstances, which you'll learn about as you get to know her. Here we are on November 11th, 2021 in the exam room at Critter Care Animal Hospital. Soji had just been weighed and we are waiting for the vet to conduct an examination of her, implant her microchip, and take a choanal swab so that we can test her for nidovirus.
She's a chill snake. Could be part of that good old-fashioned ball python freeze too.
This is the microchip being implanted, and in snakes there are a couple of different spots that it can be done, and we choose to do it in the posterior portion of the animal on the left side anterior to the cloaca. Soji's getting a choanal swab, which is a way to get a saliva sample for sending off to a lab to test for nidovirus or serpentovirus. Dr. Pfaff has since found out that we can also do a swab of the cloaca, and that by doing both of these tests, we can get a more thorough nidovirus screen done. And so I'm going to be taking Soji back to the hospital next week, and she's going to have that cloacal swab done, and we're going to also send that in. Good girl, Soji. I know all the bad stuff's over with today, and then if you're not sick or anything, you can start doing stuff. Hello everyone, and welcome to this behavior break where I'm going to go over behavior modification techniques. In case you didn't watch the rest of the episode that this is included in, or in case you're watching it as a standalone clip, I am Lori Torrini with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. I'm a certified animal trainer and behaviorist. I'm going to go over, in last week's episode or in the previous behavior clip, we went over a list of behavior modification techniques that included passive habituation, active habituation, counter conditioning. And in this episode, in this behavior break, we are going to go over passive habituation and active habituation. Habituation. Let's go over passive habituation first. And that's what you're seeing in this video of our Angolan python. I realize this isn't a Python regius, and these behavior breaks are usually included in our Royals at the Ranch series, but he just gave a great example of some passive habituation. So it's basically setting the snake up in a species appropriate habitat arranged with options to find refuge or see out and observe activity around them. You want to place the habitat in a normal room and conduct your normal activity. And this way the snake can choose in their own time to interact or not. And when I say interact, I even mean just being visible and looking out and observing what's going on outside the habitat. Them looking at you and you looking at them is a form of interaction. But hopefully they work up to a comfort level where they are coming to the door, and even though you're standing there and you open the door, they're still choosing to come out, like you just saw Radek do in this video. So they get used to normal activities as they realize they aren't a threat. So you're not really doing anything except setting the snake up in a safe environment and then going about your business. And you're letting the snake acclimate to all of the activity in your home in their own time as they feel comfortable doing it. Now let's talk about active habituation, and let's get the ugly one out of the way first. And this is something that we don't do. It's not recommended. I don't do it. But flooding is a form of active habituation. And this is where the snake is exposed to a stimulus that frightens them or that they find aversive at full intensity with no opportunity to create distance from it, escape, or to stop the stimulus. The snake does not understand what's happening. The snake is way over threshold. They are distressed, and toxic stress may result. And if you remember in past behavior breaks, toxic stress is a level of distress so severe that it can cause permanent damage to the structure of the brain, and it can have permanent detrimental emotional and behavioral side effects on your animal. Now, the snake does not understand what's happening, and so it is considered unethical, cruel, and it's completely unnecessary because there are other ways to actively habituate your snake to handling and household activity and to different stimuli. Exposure therapy is something that you might have heard of in human psychotherapy, and it's basically flooding. But understand that people realize what's going on. They can be explained to what this exposure therapy or what this flooding means. It means that if you are a human being that's deathly afraid of spiders, that I'm going to put you in a room and I'm going to throw 1,000 spiders on top of you until you just get used to it and you aren't afraid of them anymore because you realize they didn't hurt you. Well, a person has the capacity to understand that that's going to happen, and they can consent to that. And even though people do consent to exposure therapy or flooding, it is still extremely distressful for them, and it is not recommended in all cases. Animals don't understand what's happening, and they can't consent to this. They can't say, oh yeah, I understand that you're just going to hold me until I realize that you're not going to hurt me. They have no clue what you're doing. They have no concept of understanding what flooding or exposure therapy is, and they absolutely have no ability to consent to it or not. So flooding is not considered an industry best practice in the field of animal behavior. And if you go to the IAABC's website, they have a professional code of ethics that I welcome you to read. And the link is in this slide. I will also put the link in the video description. But no reputable animal training or behavior organization condones the use of flooding with animals. All right, now on to happier things. And again, a video of our Angolan python Radek here. Active habituation, and we're going to talk about systematic desensitization, which is totally different from flooding. It's basically the opposite of flooding. It's gradual exposure to something the snake finds fearful or aversive, and you start at a distance or for short periods of time, and then you allow the snake to gradually get used to whatever that stimulus is until they realize on their own that it's not scary. And this is key, the snake has the ability to escape. This is not forced exposure. So in this video, Radek was at the door. I walked up to the door. He remained comfortable and relaxed. I opened the door. He remained comfortable and relaxed. I put my hand out. which he did not have a choice in that. I put my hand there, so there were only a couple of options. He could continue to come out onto my hand and arm, or he could retreat back into his enclosure, and he chose to come out. Once he's out, he doesn't have to remain on my arm. He can choose to climb down on the table. He can choose to turn around and climb up on top of his enclosure. He can choose to climb back into his enclosure. So he has options, and he has the choice of control to engage in this activity or not. He has been systematically desensitized to my presence and then to my touch through gradual exposure until obviously at this point he doesn't see me as a threat or anything to be afraid of. Systematic desensitization along with counter conditioning are the recommended techniques used to treat fear per all legitimate veterinary training and behavior organizations. That is directly from the IAABC, the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. So today we discuss passive habituation, which is basically just setting the snake up in a species typical habitat and leaving them alone to get used to activity on their own. We talked about active habituation, which is intentionally working to get the snakes used to a stimulus. There are a couple of types of active habituation. One is flooding, which is inhumane and unethical. That is where you force yourself on the snake and you stay there in their presence until they get used to you and they see that you're not a threat and they realize they shouldn't be afraid of you. Or you force handling of your snake and you hold on to them and you don't let them get away until they acquiesce. Well, what usually happens is they just become so tired and exhausted from trying to get away or from being so distressed that they just go limp and shut down. And that is not becoming comfortable and relaxed in your presence or with handling. It's very aversive to them. So we do not want to do that. We don't want to do any type of flooding. We don't want to force our presence on the snake without them having the ability to get away, and we don't want to force handling or touching of the snake unless they have the ability to get away if they choose. We want to do systematic desensitization, which is slow and methodical exposure to whatever the aversive stimulus is or whatever the snake perceives as a threat. So if you're doing handling training, first you just want to get the snake used to your presence, and when they're comfortable and relaxed with you being nearby, then you want to get them used to being touched by you, but you always want to make sure that they have the opportunity to get away from you. And then you can gradually hold them for short periods of time, a few seconds, and then maybe a minute or two at a time, until they are truly becoming comfortable and relaxed with that, and they're no longer trying to get away, but you are not preventing them from getting away. As you're doing the gradual desensitization to your presence and to touch and to handling, the snake should always have the option to get away if they choose. Next time, we're going to talk about counter conditioning, which is another behavior modification strategy that is recommended actually to be used in conjunction with gradual desensitization. Thank you for watching this behavior break, and if you have any questions about animal training and behavior, don't hesitate to contact me via my website at behavioreducation.org, via email at behavioureducationllc@gmail.com, via Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, or on YouTube. Here is my website, and here is my email address. And you might want to take note of this email address because I am in need of more Royals at the Ranch photos and videos. That brings us to Royals in your home right now. Please remember to send me photos and then short videos of Royals in your home so I can include them in this segment. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Please send me short videos of royals in your homes and send me photographs of Python regius in your homes, being part of your family. I'm running out of pictures and videos, and if you haven't noticed by now, the last few weeks I've recycled some that I've already used once, and I'm even using some of my own royals in my home in some of the videos. So please email me photos or short video segments of royals in your home to BehaviorEducationLLC@gmail.com, or you can send those to me via Facebook Messenger. Those are the best ways to get them to me. And until next time, everybody, please remember to always be kind and love your animals.